Welcome to the fourth segment of the Procurement Roundtable. In this roundtable, we will hear from the panel leaders that are what the various steps in procurement and supply chain functions the leaders can take to reduce volatility in supply relationships. I'm going to go back to Sheila. How are you there? What are your views on the next steps procurement and supply chain sourcing leaders need to take in reducing volatility in supply relationships and optimizing risk management associated with demand and supply networks or enhancing vendor segmentations?
So I would say in the IT area where we have these long lead times for equipment to arrive, one of the things that I have been recommending to the project teams, they need to be able to prioritize and do risk assessment early. They need to plan for these disruptions that are continually coming forward. And they need to leverage the technology that we have. But most important, they need to plan earlier. So, for example, if a project is supposed to start in Q2 and you have to buy hardware, before you could just in Q1, you plan for a hardware and you tell the vendor, I need the hardware, and it'll be showing up just as you're ready to do the project, right? So you have to start planning this last Q3. You need that long lead time now to order what you need. So, and you can't order without engineering. So much of what we do, and the real example is when we look at the start of the year and we say, now we have the budget to do this project, and you reach out to the vendor and say, sorry, I can't get that to you for 6 months. Well, your year is shot, right? And that's one of the things we have to start looking at and prioritizing the risk assessment and thinking about how we're going to get this done early. Another area that I just came into being, I was looking at electricity cost and thinking about our new contracts in some of our buildings as they expire and so on. And now with the volatility, we need to look at and consider how we're going to use the market index and doing hedging to get those prices. And we have to think about them long-term, not short-term, right? So, for instance, the Russia war is going to create some increased cost around maybe fuel. And of course, that's going to affect electricity and your utilities and so on. And so if you're just starting to look at that, you can't expect that you're going to get a reduced cost over the next 6 months. Who knows? It could be a year. But what you have to think about is, how do I set this up so that I can see the longer term and opt for the ups and downs of them to get you costs, that will probably even grow. Okay. So definitely you have to start planning for more than just the short term. Say our negotiating strategies around reducing cost or keeping costs low has to change. However we negotiate today, and as I think, was it Brooke or Justin who said, hey, you know what? We're probably still negotiating with 20 years ago type of negotiating strategies. It's time to start looking at it differently, right? And I think Terry mentioned that whole notion of partnering with our vendors, with our suppliers, and asking them how we can help. How can we help you help us? And just looking at a few things, last year when the chip issue was a problem and still is, but Last year, we're looking for laptops and we can't find them. So what we opted to do was buy more. So you can buy them and stock them, or you can just order them and wait for them to come. It's going to take a longer time, but at least your order is in first. Those are some of the strategies that I see we're going to have to look at moving forward. Now, I am totally aligned with the data, the data strategy. IT was probably the group that talked about data, but now the business has to do that. Procurement has to do that. We have to look at the data. We have to understand the data. And to do that, we're going to need technology and maybe even data scientists to help us. And those are some of the things that we could bring into our negotiating strategies that will change the way we do things today. Okay.
Thanks, Sheila. I couldn't agree with you more on that. I think that the time horizon for planning is really key. We can't look at things in this short horizon anymore. We really have to kind of plan in a much broader, longer horizon than maybe we have in the past. And I think that's very critical. So thank you. Terry, how about you? What were your insights on the same topic?
Yeah, I really want to underscore what Sheila had mentioned, what I talked about earlier about really embracing our supplier relationships. It is a mind shift that we've gone through and how we work with our suppliers and our vendors. It's not us versus them. It's us versus a common problem. Ultimately, we all want a smooth supply chain and getting more goods to our consumers. And really partnering up with our vendors. And how we've done that is where it makes sense, we've actually done on-site visits and really seen our vendors' facilities and understand their processes. And again, kind of understanding where the bottlenecks, where the risks are, and how can we mitigate together? Is it a matter of us just being a little bit more long-term vision-minded and being able to plan maybe a quarter earlier, as again Sheila alluded to, or is it a matter of being very specific in what we need right now versus what can come a little bit later? But again, really having that full visibility and full sharing of data. Again, as Justin said, it's all about the data. Really understanding what it is we're trying to accomplish and where currently and what we want to accomplish in the future. Again, partnering up with our vendors and our suppliers to do that. So critical for us.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate it. DJ, how about you? What are your views on this topic area?
Yeah, so my thought is, as I completely echo with Sheila and Terry and Justin, what they talked about, and just building on what Justin was talking about now, how technology functions are getting into procurement, which was traditionally thought to be a very simple function, how we can use the AI, ML, the blockchain in order to bring in transparency, visibility in the entire process. And I wanted to bring an example, as if you see across the globe, we have seen companies, CPG companies and retailers. One of the problems they have is that the procurement managers, they buy the raw materials across the globe and at various prices, and they have a list of suppliers. And the key challenge is to compare the quality on numerous parameters, And along with the price also, there are other parameters like supply and demand, associated risk, inventory management accuracy, volatility. So, and this is becoming complex. It is no more an easy task. So in order to address this, how we can create a platform, which uses the AI-driven analytics solution, and in order to, bring in data which can provide or which can, assist the procurement managers in order to take better decisions. This will help us in two things. One is that certainly it will help us in terms of forecasting and making right decision, and also help us in terms of saving cost. So I think, these are the platforms which we have created with the companies, and how we can bring in more transparency, flexibility in the entire process. That's my thought, Chris.
Thanks, Vijay. Appreciate it. And finally, Brooke, how about you? What would be your insights in this topic?
So, I think that there are going to be continuing challenges. I mean, as Sheila said, just trying to get devices, just desktop devices. That was something where you could ask every provider in the country, and you needed a computer that looked exactly like this. And it's like, I'm sorry, we don't have any inventory for that. And that's where flexibility is going to be something that is going to have to be a factor in how you're doing this. What are the alternatives if we can't get that particular widget, that particular product, that particular ingredient? How are we going to address that? Some of that is going to be changing the just-in-time manufacturing mindset to have more supply on hand, like Sheila was saying. That gets back into, well, wait a minute, that drives up costs, because now you have warehousing and inventory costs and carrying costs for all that material. And that's where you need to be able to look at the dials. Where can you spin up or down, whether it's capacity, number of sources you have, quality of the product that you're producing, time to market, time to delivery. You're going to need to be able to be flexible across every step of what you're doing, from the materials, assembly, putting it all together, shipping it out to potential customers, to retail locations, recognizing that they're going to be doing the same kind of calculus in their head. How much inventory do I need to have on the store to make sure that I can still sell to the consumer that walks into that door, so that we don't have what we've seen the past couple of years? You walk into Target and there's no toilet paper for weeks at a time. And we see those kinds of things continuing to come up. And I don't see those challenges disappearing anytime soon with all the volatility that's going on in the world today, because we're all trying to figure this out at the same time. We're all trying to adjust what our supply chains look like, how much we need to have, how quickly we need to get there. And that takes time, especially when you're dealing with the larger organizations. They're trying to get everything in place, and you're going to have these shifts over and over and over, which again comes back to this question of flexibility and resiliency. Chris, you had mentioned BCP before. That is critical here. Procurement has become something that really needs to be part of the business continuity plan discussion in a way that it never was before. And it was always there. It's like, well, if we can't get this material, then we don't have a business, but that'll never happen. No, I'm sorry, that is going to happen on a disturbingly frequent basis. And so you need to have those big discussions of how this is going to work. But you can't have that without the information, without the data that you're going to get from the kinds of platforms that Vijay is talking about, from the partnerships that we've all been talking about up and down the chain. If we can all work together, then we all end up better. The suppliers sell more supplies, the manufacturers make more stuff, the consumers can buy more stuff. Everybody wins there. But again, lots of discussion, lots of partnership, and lots of working together.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Thanks, Brooke. I mean, I think that tidbit you touched on about the JIT nature of the business that has kind of evolved over the last 10 years, where everything's just in time versus, the channel loading of, stock positions, like Sheila said, whether those are ours or the OEMs. It'll be interesting to see if that starts to shift a little bit back to having some channel volume in the future versus everything being JIT, because I think that's where we're all feeling kind of that like shortage pain that came out of the pandemic.
Yep.
So thank you.
My
Great.
opinion is the smart way to deal with that is going to be to have flexibility in that. That's one of the dials. How just in time are you? How much capacity do you have to build up that inventory and to be able to scale that back and forth? Everything's looking good. I have 5 different sources for coffee beans or whatever it is that we're sourcing. I can do as JIT as I want. Wait a minute, there's some storms, some weather, some disruption. Maybe I should start stacking up that inventory. And if you've got that kind of flexibility, you've got resiliency.
Yeah. Thank you.